All right, there we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Getz, co-chair of the Safe Water Advisory Group. Welcome to our December 7th hybrid meeting. We are at the Pease Water Treatment Facility on Grafton Drive, Portsmouth. So we are doing our first hybrid meeting attempt from here, and we do have some people in person. So I'll turn it over to Andrea Miko to say hello to everyone else, and we'll do our best to let people that are on Zoom participate as well.
Items on our agenda, as well as a tour tonight of the plant. And so everyone in person will get a tour, and anyone who's virtual, there is a link that they can watch a short video about the plant as well. Those that can't be here, so what things look like in here. So we'll go ahead and get started. You can go to the next. Well, let's do introductions, I guess, just to make sure. So Andrea Miko, Portsmouth resident, co-chair of the SWAG, and this way.
I'm Vince Lombardi, and I'm the city councilor.
That water source.
Support public insurance.
Move the screen over here.
Patrick Hillman.
Thank you. Tim is our in charge of this place. So when we get to the tour, we're going to turn it over to Tim and I'll do that. So then we have a remotely. Let me see. We have. Okay. We have Elizabeth, our new member. Are you out there? Are you able to unmute?
Yes, Elizabeth Barrett, school board member and new member of the advisory committee. I'm actually on my way there, so I will see you shortly.
Okay, well, as you drive, if you happen to be driving, we have a sign up front, but it's a little bit dark. Just past the park and ride. Just keep going, and you'll see some lights and a parking lot on your right.
Thank you.
Welcome. So, Andrea, let me minimize. A little chunky doing it this way, but I guess it's better than. There we go. Let's get that over there.
So I think our first item on the agenda is that one of our current members who's been on the SWAG since it formed in 2020, Hope Van Epps, she's the school board representative on the SWAG. After this meeting, she will be transitioning off of the SWAG, and we will be welcoming Elizabeth Barrett, who's also a Portsmouth resident and a school board member to the SWAG. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Hope very much for her contribution being on the SWAG since 2020, and then also welcome Liz, and we really look forward to her contributions as well. And then the next item on our agenda is we just need to approve our August 2022 minutes. I know Brian sent them out a couple weeks ago. I think we need a motion. A second to do that, and then we'll vote on that.
One for us, all motion.
Yeah, okay. We've got a motion and a second. Okay. Is everybody in favor of approving the minutes from August 2022 meeting?
Yes.
Great. And is anyone not in favor? Okay, we will consider those minutes approved. And then from here, we will go on with the tour. After the tour, we'll come back for a few other updates. On the next slide, Brian, is there a link for the virtual tour if anybody is?
Yeah, for anybody out in Zoom land, go back. There is a. Get this out of the way. There is a video on our city's YouTube webpage, and the link down at the bottom gets you to that. And it's a video that Tim Green did. Great job of just a little overview of this facility after it was finished construction last year. and it's up on the website. It's in the Think Blue playlist, and there are some other videos because I imagine the tour that we're going on will take 20 minutes to a half hour. We'll reconvene back this way. Might want to wait a couple minutes for the others if we can.
Can we review the schematic?
Schematic of this place?
Well, right there,
Tim could do a quick start. Of
that would be informative for the tour.
it will be, yes. Tim, you want to just do the dog and pony here to start with before we go out in the system as a whole?
That system. It's beginning to end of the process. So we have the 3 wells over here, Harrison Well, Smith Well, and Haven Well. Design capacity of 1,200 gallons a minute between the 3 wells. Haven Well, about 50% of that capacity. Sorry, I know that. So right there on the left, you see the 3 wells. We come up, we hit a raw water booster to boost the flow and also maintain pressure on the well side. And then we hit cartridge filters, and then where all the magic happens for PFAS removal is the resin filters, and then right into the GAC filters and out into the distribution. So in a nutshell, you'll see every component of that process as we walk through. Yep.
And from here, Tim is essentially able to see what's happening with everything. Also adjust, turn on, see what the monitors are saying. Pressures come through too high or too low. He wants to shift the filters themselves. We've got 6 trains of the resin filters and 3 carbon. So on any given day, like today, there's 3 that are in operation just because they're, we run all 6 when we have higher demands. And it allows them to rotate filters as well. So we can sort of sequence and as we look to hopefully, as we need to change out the filters themselves, they won't all have to get more about them.
How long does it?
That's a good question. We're stopping right now. Time will tell. That's what I 90 million. Still tracking.
I presume those are expensive.
When they were first bought, it was about $65,000 to invest. Of rent. We're in the process right now of pricing out a change out, so I assume that has gone up a little bit.
Yeah.
And the resin's never been changed out yet?
Correct.
Okay.
Getting very good performance out of the resin, which is great because that's how it initially was brought into the fold. It really performed well in treating the PFAS versus the carbon, but we have both 2 resins and carbon afterwards.
One thing that's not. We started after compared to what we're using in real time to compare performance and cost.
Where do you do that? You just take.
Well,
All right.
I'm into it.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Well, that's great. And that's part of why it's nice to have people here in person. You can do presentations over and over, and then until you actually see it in person, it really doesn't hit you as much.
Question from Rosalie?
Yes.
Take questions.
No, when we get to questions,
Okay.
there'll be questions, there'll be opportunity at the end of the meeting
Question, comment.
during that part of the tour, so.
Remember the number, right? Is it secure, like, do people out? The public have access to?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're totally separate from the internet. We have our own dedicated connection to the water system. People ask more questions about that and we can only answer so
No,
much.
it's just like the infrastructure.
Yeah,
itself.
Yeah.
What people, what the general public.
well, the control part of it, turning things off and on, monitoring is totally secure. Yeah.
Very good.
Never say never.
Everything here is alarmed too, so if anything happens here, we get messages on our phone immediately, so we're in tune. We're in Madbury all the time.
They're on your call.
We rotate. Tim is not the only person. Got 6 other staff. Rotate. So he's a go-to and something alarming and, somebody until they're fully familiar with it. Tim is kind of the go-to on, oh no, make sure you turn that on. Adjustment. Yeah.
So, the other end of the water system, out on Pierce Island, I know they lost some staff and are, they're trying to hire. I don't know whether they have hired, but are you able to maintain your staff there?
Pierce Island, fortunately, we hired a couple new people, so that's good. And here we have a couple openings because we've had 2 retirements recently. Fortunately, one of the retirees is working with us part-time, which is great because he has great knowledge and excellent mechanic. The skill set for being an operator runs the gamut. You have to be able to work in a lab and do water quality stuff, and know what's happening, on a screen and adjusting pumps and stuff. But then you also need to get dirty and turn valves and fix pumps and piping and analyzers and things like that. So this gentleman that retired working part-time, he's able to keep assisting us with that. We've got, Tim is one of our newer staff people, but he comes to us with experience, which is great. Got another gentleman, Mike Paganelli, who is Tim's peer over at Madbury. He's a treatment ops foreman, and we're in the process of hopefully hiring another staff person here soon. It's tough. I mean, there are openings all over the country essentially for water operators. I think it's the complexity and what you need and the skill set is a lot different than it was 20, 30 years ago. You didn't have this. You didn't have, variable speed drives. You didn't have parameters, especially when you're in Madbury. The response time of when things start changing and water quality might be affected, you gotta make decisions pretty quick. So that's takes a lot of skill.
Yeah.
So you're at computers, but you're also field. We've been fortunate. Fortunately, recently we were able to up the wage for an operator, both water and wastewater. So we're seeing the candidates, and the word gets out. Not that we're trying to feel from other communities, we get interest, and then of course, the other communities say, oh, we're hearing about Portsmouth now, and it's sort of like we used to be the top pay, and then other places sort of overstepped us. So we've been able to get back up there, which should be. I mean, we're the most complex water system because we have surface water, we have groundwater, and then we have groundwater treatment. So we have all three. And then on the wastewater side, we have the first biological air filtration system in the state and in New England, I believe, except there's one down in New York. So that's good-ish. So that's a unique and complex facility. And then we have Pease. So we have a Pease wastewater plant, which is totally different. And its challenge is it's old and in need of some upgrades. And we're working on those as well. Damn it. And then we've got between water, wastewater, and stormwater, we have 200, 320, we have over 400 miles of pipe that we're managing. Valves, hydrants, connections. Should we tour?
Yes, please.
All right, well, I'll hang back. Elizabeth shows up for hope. Let Al, so the way that the tour we're planning on doing is Al's gonna, well, maybe I'll do the first part, and then Al and Tim will take it inside. Not to mention the old building. So this is the old building. Things were starting when we first had just a demonstration solar system. 2000 carbon filters. And then we take a photo, we had cut all of the roof, we put the building and drop it in. Always dropped in, and decided at that time was with the street of Harrison and Smithwell that had lower levels. Filter, the line, and we also had water. Game. Stages.
Keith.
Hello.
Hi.
Are you Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome.
No, not that.
Okay.
Just swallowing funny and operating. Good stuff. All right. All right. Whatever it is, it's not.
Not for that, or whatever.
Like, that's not.
Yeah.
I don't wanna be. So maybe I should tell them that I have been tested for COVID 3 times and I lost my voice and it was coming back and I used it too much today.
Okay.
So.
Totally fine, I appreciate that. Let everybody know. Happy holidays. Too many. Catch you up. Okay. Take care.
haven't met. So I don't think we're
So Katrina, he was having a conference.
Oh.
So she just.
She left?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just tells her regret.
Thank you.
Let them run the rest of the meeting. Hey,
Oh, he got 2 more questions.
all right. Mike. Okay. Well, welcome our new member.
Yeah. Are we still recording here?
We're still recording, yeah, and Rich, DiPantima is on as he's with us. I keep trying to promote him to, panelists. It won't let it happen, but he's there. Hopefully you're there, Rich, and, we'll, hand it back to Andrew to introduce our new member right here.
Liz Barrett, President, board member. She's going to be taking over for Hope on our swag. And again, as we said earlier, we're very thankful for Hope and her contributions, and we're excited to have you join our group and help give us the school board perspective and your city resident perspective on safe water issues.
Thank you. I'm excited to report back to the school board too. And I think willing to see that update.
Thank you. Great.
Great.
much.
Well, thanks for coming. The tour, we're gonna move into some of the other parts of the meeting. Tim, you don't have to sit in the back corner. You're welcome to join us here. So next up, I was going to give a quick little supply update, which is a combination of information that Al has given me and Tim, and start with trying to move things around that we can see this one thing in the webinar. There we go. So the latest weather and drought, we're still recovering a bit. We've had rains in September, October, November. We're all just kind of average. So we're just at the cusp of getting out of the drought, but abnormally dry for the most part. And as you move further south, especially down in Massachusetts, they're still in a moderate drought down there. So we'll see what the next few months bring. Hopefully we'll get average precipitation. I wish I could just get rid of this thing there. We're just gonna have to bring it up here. I'll keep moving around. So Al put together this, which is really in the blue is the average rainfall, precipitation, and then what we received in red. As you can see, as we were moving into the end of June, things are pretty low. But July, August, September, the rest of the summer and into up to now, we're running about average, which is really good. For our system, we only had voluntary restrictions. But the one thing, when you look at an overall 12-month precipitation, we are still behind by about 6 inches. So we will keep tracking that. Here's a shot of the reservoir. So this is what we see when it gets dry. And again, as you can see, our marker is the 2016 drought. That was a couple of years into Al's tenure here. So we had to get a really major drought for Al to really tell us what the depths of a really, really dry period were like. Because then we sort of have used that as a marker that hopefully won't get that dry again. We were pretty darn close to it in 2020, as you can see. The drought itself takes a while to go into, and the little dots are like points in time. So you can see when we do get precipitation, the recovery of the reservoir is much quicker than the drop. So we were tracking that way again this year. And then when July came and August, September, we fortunately recovered with some pretty good rains. And we are right now water going over the dam, and so that's good on the surface water supply. And so here's a breakdown of all the water sources. I know most recently, if you read about the Little Bay Waterline Project, Al talked about the percentage of water that comes to the Portsmouth system through that pipe, and it's a good percentage. So on the Portsmouth side of our water sources, 70% comes from the surface water. The rest from Madbury comes from Letternell. 4 wells. Madbury well 4 was replaced with Madbury well 4R. That's some of the upgrades we did in Madbury to our wells. And we have a Madbury well 5. So we now have 4 wells in Madbury, which is great because it allows us a little more options in dry periods and also for peak demands. The Portsmouth well, about 6%, the Collins well, 2%, and the Greenville well, 10%. So that's the Portsmouth side. And then since we've been able to activate, and you saw this facility here, and here at Pease, and I talked about the Portsmouth booster. Fortunately now, Pease is a standalone system again. So all the sources, for the most part, with the exception of an occasional water coming from Portsmouth, and right now Tim is just running about every 2 weeks just to keep, the line active, and also that we've got can balance things out and make sure that if we need for peak demands, we can do Portsmouth. But anyways, you can see the percentage we split. The way Tim operates this facility is really the 3 wells in combination, and so they're very close in supply with each other. And he runs it any given day, about 200 gallons a minute together, or 150 right now. So we try to blend, and I think Tim might have explained that we're trying to run this place more steady state with the sources. The Haven well is capable of a lot more water than the other 2 wells, but we don't want to push it that hard yet until we fully know quality, the treatment here. So things are proving out fairly good from that standpoint. And then here's our water demands. So there's always questions on the development and our customers in Portsmouth, and where are we going with water demand. We're still, this year was kind of an average year when you look at it in the overall perspective versus other years, but we were below average in water demand, and so we still attribute that to fixing leaks in the pipes and having customers be much more efficient than they used to be 20 years ago. And again, the big plus is our rebate program, which we're still close to 1,500 devices that we've given people rebates on for replacing a high flow toilet with a low flow one, and then getting high efficiency washing machines. And we continue that program. We're still the only water system in New Hampshire that offers a rebate. So very good news. Al has continued to work on acquisitions of conservation easements. So we originally worked with Dover in 2018 to help them acquire land along the reservoir, followed by our own acquisition with the Southeast Land Trust, conservation easement on 71 acres, and then 107 acres property in 2020, and we're currently through City Council. Al brought this forward a few meetings ago that we are now in position to negotiate the acquisition of a 45-acre parcel, which is right adjacent to the reservoir. And this one, as Al showed in his presentation, has had real potential for development. So we want to keep that out. This would be houses and septic and everything that comes with it, with a house. very close to the intake structure of the water system there. So we're going to keep that going, and Al's working with town of Madbury and others around there to continue those efforts. So here's a breakdown. This goes through September of this year. We didn't update, and my apologies for this slide. We do have updated info, but we're close to 400. This is 315 million gallons of water through these filters as of the end of September, and still non-detect for all the regulated compounds. So we're getting very good performance out of the resins and the carbon itself. And as Tim showed you at the end of the tour, we're looking at how performance might match up with some other types of resins as well. And so Al tallied up our latest. The regulatory requirement for New Hampshire is a quarterly running average for the 4 regulated compounds. These are the latest numbers that go through September. October. So this would be the most recent XSS, PFOS, PFOA, and PFNA, which is a compound we haven't seen at any of our sources, but the running average of our water sources today. And where we stand as far as where things might be going with PFAS regulations. So as I just mentioned, we're in compliance with all the New Hampshire standards, but we do expect any day that EPA is going to propose regulations for PFOA and PFOS, but they also had mentioned they may be considering actions to address PFAS as groups or some of the short chain compounds. So the word we have is they're going to announce something by the end of this year. And then there'll be a year whereby it's proposed. So there's a year for comment and review. And then they will adjust or finalize that rule 1 year later, which would be the end of next year if they bring it out this year. And they'll have both what's called a maximum contaminant level goal. So there's with water quality regulation, there's usually a goal, and then there's a standard maximum contaminant level, which would be what we call the MCL, which is what we have to abide by as a drinking water system. Or they may go with a treatment technique, which is something that we do for total trihalomethanes. And we also do it for the lead compliance program. And so more detail I grabbed off of the EPA's website. And so they're trying to show a bit more about the feasibility and setting a standard. So goals are always nothing almost for every contaminant, but then they do cost benefit analysis and the capability of actually being able to treat all your water. So and they do a cost benefit analysis. So it gets into a lot of detail. There's a lot of back and forth. And I know EPA often been mentioned that it takes them a long time to do all that stuff, but there are a lot of reviews that take place and a lot of scientific analysis that they do. So anyway, in respect to that, what are we doing? So we're tracking that as always. I'm on a committee. Actually, we have a call tomorrow, American Water Works committee of people throughout the country that are addressing PFAS in their own systems and throughout other states. So we perhaps might get an update and an idea of when things may be released. Hopefully not on Christmas Eve, but such might happen. regardless, when that does happen, we will, see where that lines up with what we have for water sources, but again, it'll be proposed. It will not be a regulatory standard at the time. But we are looking at conceptual plans. We're not just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. So the sources we have, the Portsmouth and Collins wells and the Portsmouth system that are on the edge of the Pease Aquifer. We've been tracking those for 8 years, and we are working with our consultant to look at preliminary design of treatment on those. And we're also working with our consultant for preliminary design for the Greenland well and what it would take. So we don't want to be caught cold without looking at, what it would take. And our capital improvement program has $2.5 million earmarked for treatment of the Greenland well, because if Portsmouth and Collins are deemed necessary to have treatment, we have the Air Force that will be reaching out to continue to reimburse us for that work. But the Greenland well, that's more of a broader issue of, the broader picture, which, the rest of the New Hampshire's dealing with. If you don't have a responsible party that you can point to that is the source of, contaminant in your water, you have to foot the bill yourself at the time. We'll be bringing that to council, and we'll also, we do know that. And as Tim showed you at the end of the tour, we are also looking at, inside the filters, whether, what the optimal treatment is, because even though we have a certain filter system in line right now and a certain resin, it may not be the end all. We can compare, and we're doing 4 different treatment filters right now. So we're waiting for our consultant to review that data and give us a recommendation, because we're getting ready to, I don't know if you mentioned Al or Tim, that we are going to change some of the filters out. And again, it's to cycle them through. They're still doing fairly well for PFAS, but also we have an agreement with the Air Force to replace some of the filter media this year, and then we get in a cycle. We don't want to get to a point where we have to replace everything all at once and rotate things. And lastly, we're sharing all of this. I'm going to move things around so you can see. Just yesterday, Tim and Al and I took the top right photo. There's Tim in the photo. This is the Young Professionals for New Hampshire Waterworks Association. So they do a quarterly meet at a water system. So they came to Madbury first yesterday afternoon, and then they came here for a tour of our facility, and then they went to Great Rhythm, and we a little bit of Portsmouth water in the beverage, so that was great. And then so we are, and I don't know, we gave a tour a couple weeks ago for Chelmsford. Came here, was it Chelmsford or? Abington, Brockman. Yeah, Abington, Rockland. Yeah. So we've been taking, everybody wants to see. Dover came here, Merrimack's come here. So we do share the data and information of how our system is performing, and so that's helpful for other systems to figure out what it is they may or may not need to do. So any questions? I guess I could stop at supply update questions. Sure.
So, my first question is about the droughts. Is that normal to have that many droughts? Is a drought normal? I feel
In
like
New
that's a
England,
silly
it seemed to be more normal. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so what would be typical every couple?
It all depends on the statistics, so.
Okay, but 3 since 2016 is a lot. That's significant. Okay.
Climate
Yeah, no, I know, I just
Well,
was curious.
and, you know, what's unique, each one's been different too, in a different way. Because, you know, we got like last year or the last year out, there were all these storms and they were on their way and then they'd go out to sea. So, I mean, it's just like this weather pattern that we get in New England that, you know, by chance, you know, these storms that might have given us 2, 3, 5 inches of rain or a big snowstorm went out to sea. I mean, I don't know how many hurricanes were, you know, because you go to the ocean and the surfers are loving it because these huge storms are 100 miles off the coast or 200 miles because they've worked their way up. So it's hit and miss. New England has always had that component. So we actually haven't had the big storms like we did for 15 years, you know, since the Mother's Day storm in 2006. So, yeah. We had Sandy, we had, yeah, Sandy came through, but then it went west. So we got some of it, but not near what Keene and Vermont got.
Heavy rains are good, but aren't longer term lighter rains better?
Yeah, what we got today was great,
Yeah.
inch.
And it's all.
So leaves on the trees aren't actively sucking it
Yeah.
up, so it's all the trees.
Is there any that you have for those already? In 2016 and then where we at now, but are those numbers affected by the use of more wells or wells that are producing more or technology since that 2016 drought? Like, are those numbers affected by that because they're gonna change enforcement as far as water usage or wells that would have changed the numbers there? Or is it just?
Oh, you mean like what we would draw, like the reservoir itself?
How it would. They have those things with drought numbers or what is their prediction?
The drought is a drought, you know, that sort of feels along. We react to the drought, though, definitely, and a lot of factors of the drought is the timing. In different years, but you had a really dry spring, and that set up for a really dry summer, but all of a sudden it rains in July and August. The way we operate our the supplies vary, so if we're seeing that drought in the water level in the reservoir is dropping quickly, we can reduce the withdrawal from the reservoir and depend on our wells more. We kind of try to do that anyway, make sure that we have enough water in our wells in case we get a drought in summertime, we have that water stored in the well. That's part of the integrated management that we're trying to do better at all the time to prepare how these droughts, we know how our system responds and we know where we can have the reserves of water.
Okay, and those drought numbers though that, like, are those like a state, like are those numbers state that we're seeing for droughts or is that?
Yeah, the map is national, it's called the drought monitor, so it's the entire nation, and then, you know, we grab the New Hampshire graphic.
That's the, would be affected. Or be not as affected areas or like terribly?
Just last year, it was this summer when a lot of systems put into water restrictions.
Yeah, Exeter, Dover was on full restrictions, Rye Water District, pardon? Kittery did, yes. A lot of systems in Massachusetts. We put voluntary in and actually people did. Cut back what we didn't see jump. So we didn't have to get to a point of telling people to go odd even, which is our next thing, you know, odd even irrigation, or then no irrigation, which happened in 2016. When August rolled around in 2016, we stopped irrigation altogether. And it does work. We saw 15% change within a week. So our demand had dropped by 15%. So that was helpful.
Not like for any topic for during that.
Good. And we've, like I showed on that graphic with all the water sources, we have 4 wells in Madbury now. We used to have 3. And they allow us the ability to get more water out of those wells if you need to. And the other is the Haven well came online this year. That was huge. So 2016, we didn't have the Haven well, so we were just relying, of course, with the NPs on all the water sources minus the Haven well. So that's a big help to us to be able to not have to rely on.
I was also fascinated by what you attributed to stopping leakage.
Yeah,
It looked like it was a significant number.
500,000 gallons a day. Yeah, and it was through some pretty big leaks that we found that could have been running for quite some time. And the thing about our system, we're coastal, so some of those leaks being underground found pathways to streams and stuff and didn't show up. And ironically, we've had another thing too, which is, we hire a consultant that does an excellent job of putting these listening devices on hydrants and valves, and they'll put them out at nighttime when there's so much traffic or noise. And they can see if it shows up between 2 points on the pipe, and they can hear, oh, there's a lot of water running right here. They let us know, and then we can dig down and fix a leak and find a leak that way. But we also have our stormwater sampling. Every now and then they'll sample an outfall, and the outfall is running, so we're required to do that when it's called dry weather sampling. So if they go to an outfall and it's got water running, and they sample it, and then they can test it for fluoride and chlorine, and if it's real clean, they'll say, hey, this looks like it's come from the water system. So the same thing, we found a pretty big leak, probably 50 gallons a minute this year, a leak because our stormwater crew had done the sampling and said, I think you've got some water getting into the storm drain from a leaky pipe. And sure enough, a lot of times, leaks will come to the surface and, got a main break or something. Not always. So the little leaks, fixing a lot of little leaks add up. We, like our leak detection person, they'll find a leak that's 5 gallons a minute, 10 gallons a minute. I mean, those kind of things don't surface. The other thing too is when you capture those early, they don't become big leaks. So you fix a little one that could have been a major leak.
So that's how you test for them, is fire hydrants.
And valves, yeah.
Valves.
Anything you can get on and connect a listening device so that it makes a connection with the pipe in some way, and then essentially, the easiest way to say it is like, you've got the old two cans and a string. It's really that, only it's electronic, so it has that ability. Fairly simple technology in that terms. Very sensitive and real good at capturing.
Just have one more other question regarding this. You talked about having your consultants already start thinking about plans for treatment for Portsmouth, Collins, and Cleveland. Is that gas and resin?
Both.
Okay, so
But-
it's similar to this technology, or would it?
Yeah,
We're considering both at both places. And really, depending on the from back, Greenland is a little bit of a challenge because there's no sewer there. When you have green activated carbon, you need to go backwash a lot of water,
Okay,
so you have no way to put it there. So we're leaning towards resin at Greenland.
just resin?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's still in the works as part of the conceptual and preliminary design. We're working.
Okay. Any other questions on this section?
Yeah.
Move on. Thank you. This one will be really brief. So this is, if you all remember, we've been talking about this NRDC project that I sent a tap sample in back in June of last year. And that one tap sample did show the PFPRA level. That was part of a broader community study nationwide. And so I did have an update from the NRDC scientist a couple weeks ago. And basically this is what they said that I could share. If you recall, it's unpublished data and their plan is to put a paper together of all the findings. It was over 20 communities that participated in this. And so, basically it just to refresh everybody, it was a new test method through Eurofins Lab looking at 70 PFAS. And they did this in over 20 communities. NRDC did this in over 20 communities across the country. Really, I think trying to look at right now, the EPA methods only test for a certain number of PFAS. So trying to see if additional PFAS are found in this new sampling method. And I think ultimately, from what they found, there is additional PFAS found in water supplies throughout the country that aren't routinely tested for, and they will be publishing a paper on that. Basically, I think they're just saying, highlight the need for expanded individual testing and a sensitive broad spectrum total organic chlorine test. So once the paper is published, I certainly can share it with you guys, but I just wanted to provide that update that that the data collection is done nationwide. And now they're prepared.
So they're not saying that, like, you and oh, the important are there's more feedback than all of the percent.
So we have our individual data, and in the sample with this one, it did show a PFAS that we don't usually test for. We were able to successfully advocate for additional testing to confirm this. And with the additional testing, we got 2 other different results because it's kind of an evolving methodology. So, so we do have our data for Portsmouth. I don't have the data for all the other communities. But what I'm told is that all the other communities did detect PFPRA. So they wouldn't share with me like the certain levels. It's because it's not published. So yeah, and we have talked about this as a compound, I think, in the last several SWAG meetings. So I can meet with you too and kind of update you on all of those efforts.
Kick off this conversation, I need to do some of the discussion, but just some updates. I know last time we met, I gave an update on the quarter 3 lead samples. I've already gone over that. Our the quarter 3 2022 for the Portsmouth system, our 90th percentile, which is how it's regulated, was 1 part per billion. There's 15, so we're well under that. And even with the new EPA regulations for lead that will be coming out, that are out, but they don't go into effect until 2024. That new limit is 10, so we're still well under that action limit. In 2023, since we did add the wells in Madbury, well, 4R and 5, this year we activated those. That's going to trigger updated sampling plan. We're going to start in 3. So we need to sample twice as many samples twice a year instead of annually. So we'll be taking 60 samples between January 1st and July 1st, and another 60 samples from July 1st to June. So we'll be busy with that next year. Adding more sites to our sample plan for that. And then when the rule, actually, the EPA rule goes into effect, that triggers it again. So in 2025, we'll be doing it all over again. So very busy sampling. Part of the revised lead copper rule EPA has is this water service line inventory, which we've been working on. All the water suppliers around the country are working on it right now. There's a deadline of October 16th, 2024. Water suppliers need to know what the material is in all service line connections. That's both on the customer side and the city side of their service line. In this goal of trying to fund any lead services that are still out there and creating plans to remove them. As far as we know, there are no lead service lines in Portsmouth. Our biggest risk is with galvanized service lines that may be connected with a lead connector we found over the years. Our inventory has been going pretty well. We started doing inventory with a meter cruise back in 2016, I think. Oh, yeah. It's been a while. We've been we have 67% of our inventory done at this point. So we're pretty well along there. The state has grant money that's available for this, so we'll be applying for that plan to get a consultant on board, to help us guide us through the process, because of 2024, we need to have a plan on how we're going to remove all those galvanized lines versus that. So there's a lot going on with copper wall.
What do you say? So your meter people have been testing for lead?
No, so what, no,
They look at the pipes.
so when they go and change your meter out, they have to change your meter out.
Yeah.
Go in there and change the meter out. You can look at the same problem.
Okay, yeah, no, because I just had my meter changed out and I didn't know whether they took a sample.
They don't say no.
No, they looked at the pipe and you had expressed interest about testing. Certainly if your residence qualifies, we are still, we have to get the additional sample sites, so certainly get a hold of Al
Right, yeah.
if you want, because we can't just grab 60 samples randomly. We have to submit a plan to the DES. They have to approve it. They have to say yes to every site, and then they put it on a schedule. Or here are your sample sites. A lot to it, and ones drop off. So if people, it used to be sample, so you might go way back in history and say, oh, well, what about this place that had 15 parts per billion, and well, how come you're not sampling anymore? Well, they had a hit and they replaced the plumbing, so they no longer are.
Treatment.
Yeah.
Treatment for galvanized lines is not and some places that have sampled with non-detect for years and years and years. There's no point.
Rich raised his hand.
Okay,
Also on the screen.
Rich, I'm gonna see if I can. Allow to talk. Rich, are you able to talk? You'll need to unmute.
How about now?
Yes, we got you.
All right, well, just a couple of questions on the lead sampling for the customers.
Sure.
Number one is, with the sampling, is it focused on homes that were built prior to the removal of lead from the solder period? And number two, when we do the sampling, do we schedule it so it can be done with the first draw?
Yeah, we're following EPA guidance, and EPA guidance from the existing rule before the recent revisions focus on houses before 1987. That's sort of that time period where lead was taken out of the system. So anything after that is not included as a priority. So before 1987, and a lot of our in discussions with the state, we targeted even before 1950, maybe a target time to vote.
Do you have a second question?
Thank you.
Is that it, Rich?
Yeah.
How many galvanized lines we have?
Lead last checked around
60.
60
Okay.
out of the.
Is our house to the street?
Yes.
And then you have that lead.
Potentially, like there's all other places disconnected, but there's no guarantee. That's part of our plan, probably gonna. So the other, is that good? Schools and daycare, this is really sort of a discussion topic, but I wanted to just bring up how we have been working with the DES. Our water systems aren't involved in the sampling of the schools and daycares. It's really a state-run program, and they've been doing a great job. They've really built a whole whole system on getting sample bottles to schools, daycares, and whole process work. We have been helping with community campus because they're there. So we've been through this process. State actually pays for those samples. We work through them and get the bottles. And so we've assisted with them sampling requirements. So this goes into for schools. This goes back to the state rule, the HK 1421, that now has a new standard of 5 parts per billion. Actually, it's higher than 5 parts per billion. You can notify all the people that are there. Where it used to be 15 parts per billion, and this changed just this year. So now this new sampling rounds happen. So there may be notices coming out as schools are beginning to do this more. There needs to be 3 sampling rounds done before anybody can get out of the program. So one was done in 2018. This round this year. Considering this new level. I talked to Ken Lynch about that. He says a lot of the information that they're getting, there's a lot of superintendent discussions. So he's gotten all of that information and from talking with him. He's already taken care of all the Portsmouth schools and addressing.
Yeah. They've either, from what I understand, they've either replaced everything or they've taken, like if it's a lab sink or something that they don't even use anymore, they shut it down.
So the schools only have to test every few years. It's not.
I think it's. I think by 2024 they have to sample 3 times, and then there's a time period between the samples.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere along.
Yeah, I do recall. I don't remember. It was like 2016 or maybe after, but I know like at Dondero School, they found some lead. They took care of it, so.
All the sample data is online on the DES website. Go to the DES and type in search for get the lead out. It goes back to the school.
You can look up your own school.
There's a spreadsheet they download and get.
And if it's over 5, they have to report out to the. That was.
And the last item here is the plan for the customer sampling program. Another slide here of thoughts.
Getting rid of the sink, so are they required in their testing areas?
Every location, yeah.
Everywhere that you might be filling, yeah.
So this is what I'm calling the customer sampling program. It's the free sampling program, that's not really free. No, it's free sampling. We're paying for it. Right now, we're proposing to put in $2,500. This will be going into the FY24 budget. Discussion point that we have to bring the council, I believe, as a presentation part of that budget. Including this. That would pay for approximately 100 samples. Sample can be from $20 to $30. So I'm hoping that they're on that. I could talk to a local lab to see if they'd be willing to work with us. In the sort of framework where we set up a contract with them for a certain amount of money, and they handle the sample bottle. So a lot of this will depend on the customer. We'll have to get some sort of a method for the customer to request that they're. It's on the website or through email, be nice to automate this as much as possible. Then we need to verify they actually are in the water system. And then get back to them with a notification and some sort of a special code or something like that, that we'd be able to, so the lab would know that they are verified and pick up a sample bottle. And then they would actually go pick up the sample bottle, fill it up and bring it back to the lab. Really depend on the customer to take care of all that part of it. And then the results reporting, I thought the lab would be able to report both to the customer as well as to us. And then we get the invoice and pay it directly to the lab. Questions that I have, and this is sort of the I'm hoping to get discussion topics here, is the responsibility for follow-up actions. You know, what if we get somebody that has 20 parts per billion sample? Who is it on us to do the follow-up? How are we going to be able to do that? Is it enough just to send them the results and say, you guys should have somebody look at this, because when we're responsible as part of our compliance program, if we get any results over 5 parts per billion, sort of when we start asking, as you said, do you want a follow-up sample? Do you want us to come do some time sequence sample to really identify the source? And we've done that 3 or 4 times in the past 5 years with people. I'm hoping we don't have to go down the route for this, it can probably spend, that's a discussion topic of how involved we get, because there's that responsibility of what's this offered, how do we help them? And then other questions are, what if somebody wants to do repeat samples? What if they do get a hit and they want to do it again to verify, and we're going to pay for that? Is that part of this program? Multiple samples, some people want to do a kitchen sink in their bathroom sink, they're drinking water, and we have to pay for multiple samples from the site. And then the question became earlier, was commercial industrial, is this something to everyone? Those are kind of the things we need to think about. We have time to think about it. We're planning to start in July next year. It's all.
Mentioned you would be approximately how much for example?
$25 a sample is what I've been quoted. It kind of depends on the lab. The labs, what they charge, but there might be some extra handling fees if they're having to process these different than their other samples. So 20 to 30 is.
You would roll it out to so many people in various areas to get samples. It could be offered to the pool. You could pay $25 or $30 to get a sample of water.
They can do that now. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, we have that ability. You can just BS, point you to labs to do that. Yeah. Pretty much.
The local labs, you can go anytime, get a sample bottle and fill it up. This was just to try to, I think, partially get the word out. Hey, you should sample your water. And by the way,
It actually evolved from counselor's question to us about, well, what about people that aren't on the program? Sort of prompted, gee, we could do that because, we still encourage it. So how do you give people the next step of encouragement? Say, okay, well, if you want to, do legwork, we'll pay for the sample. I mean, right now we're thinking maybe 80 to 100 samples, see what the participation is, what the results are. Again, we're going to be up in our program again next year. And it's also, the outreach, the information to the customers to keep, like Al said, we know 60%, 67% of our customers, what they have for piping. But there's still the mysteries of, we don't know every pipe. They're all, buried. And a lot of internal plumbing is, behind your walls. So there's that. And you can get lead just at your faucet. So up until a few years ago, there were still parts of plumbing fixtures that had lead in them. Yeah, lead solder. They don't sell lead, or they don't. You can't, if you're a plumber, you're not allowed to use lead solder anymore, but you can still get lead solder for electronics. So Al found the one spot where it was like the worst plumbing job. He's like, this like got goop everywhere, solder, and it's like they had used the wrong. Yeah. So, and there's, somebody could have an old toolbox full of lead from 50 years ago.
I do have a rule of lead solder.
Yeah, well, I do too. I for my little power cords and electronics.
So not, this was plumber stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
I have a question and then I have some initial thoughts. So one question is, you're going to be basically doubling your sampling, right? Do you envision that maybe some people who try to sign up for this program might meet that criteria? And could you bump them over to that sampling versus taking it out of this pot of money? Okay. So I didn't know if, yeah, this might help increase,
Review on the address and make sure they're on the system.
right,
Yeah.
right. I guess if also too, we end up getting like two, you know, we're hoping for like maybe 100 or we don't know, right? This is the first time. But yeah, so if we get a huge influx of people, maybe some can kind of fall into that category. And then I think, what do you do if you get a hit right now, like from one of your sampling that is required and someone is at a level that might be concerning or whatnot? You know, you're like, what's the responsibility? Like, so do you have a fact sheet that you give these folks to say, let us in your water, here's the steps that you can take? Do you read, like all these questions that you ask, like, do you read the samples? Like, okay,
You offer that to those that want to do that, that have over a certain five types of, we offer that, and everybody that's in the sampling program gets their results, they get the description coverage,
so there's already like,
But there's only a point, yeah, that we follow, and I was just, yeah.
Right.
If we get 50 detections, it's gonna be a whole.
Yeah.
follow-up. So then some responsibility, and it may just be, here's your results, there's an issue, talk to your phone. Somehow. Let them know, that maybe that's where our responsibility, and
right,
Would there be like a responsibility, where would the state point of contact come to play with, you know, maybe like a neighborhood completely, but let's say one house, you know, tested positive for lead, would you want to test the neighbors? If there was like some sort of point from the city's perspective?
if it was part of the galvanized, that's one thing that we're looking at. We have areas that have more galvanized than others. We haven't seen this galvanized, very sporadic. But that's the thought. If this whole neighborhood went in and certain kind of history and one has a galvanized line that we detected and we found lead detection, then that would make sense to do more research. That can go more into our lead mine service, our inventory. investigations.
Galvanized pipe, the other aspect is it's pretty much anywhere that has galvanized. Anybody that has it in their house pretty much probably has gotten rid of it, because galvanized attracts calcium deposits more so than any other kind of material. So I'm doing this. What you see when you take a galvanized line out that might be an inch line, it's got like a pinhole because there's so much that has built up on that. And plus galvanized gets brittle. It has about a 50-year life. So we need to, those are places we find leaks and we replace them anyway. So that's why we've gotten rid of a lot of pipe over the years that way. Galvanized, the reason we find it just in the 50s and 60s, there's a lot of it within the size. It's not big pipes, it's usually 2-inch or less. And so it'll be like a neighborhood that is just maybe 4 or 5 houses on a little street with a dead end, it'll have a galvanized line.
Is there a way to just like answer your point? Like, that would sort of decide whether.
You can, but testing when you do plumbing is not a good time to do it because you sort of stir up everything and you're like, because we have a corrosion control program and part of that is the phosphate we add, which coats the pipes. And so, there might be some encapsulated lead is the best way to say it. If there's little trace amounts there, but then if you start doing a lot of plumbing and banging on the pipes and stuff, that'll maybe release that. So you wouldn't really get a realistic sample out of that. The other thing too, to tell people, it used to be when I first started doing water and lead was, first addressed your drinking water standard. The response was if you had lead through a sample, run your water for 2 minutes until it's cold and, it's no longer present, which really is, still kind of the case. And we have done time-lapse sampling, at some sites, to prove that out. Because sometimes if you have lead and it's high, you want to really pinpoint where it's coming from. So, running the water for 2 minutes, because when you get a lead sample, it's a bottle. And everybody's instructed to turn their water off usually, and it's a first draw in the morning, so the water has sat in the pipes, and you grab that very first sample. So it's essentially the worst case scenario, and then that sets the limit. So it's trying to really hone in on any potential that's there. But the flushing is not, it's, the recommendation, if you're still going to drink it like that, is try to eliminate it, number one. If you can't, use a Brita filter or some type of carbon filter, which does a pretty good job of taking that out. So, our plan is to do that. Al's, going to inquire a bit more with the labs. We might revise this number a little bit, but how far do we go? I think as a pilot and a start, we can certainly do this. So we'll be bringing this to council a little more formal, a little bit. Rich, did you mute again? I didn't.
I muted
Here. Go ahead.
Just a question on the lead sampling in homes. If you do find a level that's at a higher level than you would expect, do we coordinate those results with the health department so they can do work with the family to see if there's any children or others that might need to be have blood lead sampling done, and maybe help them look for sources of lead within the home?
That's a good point. We have not really seen anything above 15. 15 is the cutoff. We haven't followed up with those lower numbers. The 5 to 15 might be a good step. Might be worthy of looking into it. Something to think about. Good idea.
Okay, thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
So, yeah, seriously, I want to try to get this out of the way. Sorry.
Some additional lead efforts that have been happening kind of outside the SWAG, but with SWAG members, is myself, Kim McNamara, health officer, Hope, who's the board member who is part of the SWAG. We've been working together to gather some information and review the lead data for Portsmouth and the Seacoast. And we've also been speaking with folks at the state who lead up a lead program there, Beverly Bruin and Gail Gettins. Beverly presented to our SWAG, I think it was February of this year, which is a really long time ago. And she presented some of our Portsmouth data, and she also left us with some pretty clear things that Portsmouth could do to try to help tackle lead from a more holistic point of view. We're very lucky that it's not in our water source. As we know, it could potentially be in pipes or faucets or whatnot. We also know we have really old housing stock. It could be in a paint and people doing renovations. And so, some of the efforts that we've done since the SWAG last met, Kim, Hope, and I have, like I said, met with folks at the state. We also met with Charlene Lovett. She's the former mayor of Claremont, New Hampshire, where they have done a lot to address lead there. And she was able to give us a lot of kind of lessons learned and good steps. And really, I think what Claremont did, which is something we can try to model after, is they brought multiple stakeholders to the table to address the issue, whether that's the city, the inspection department to inspect rental properties, or the water department and addressing lead through water. They had a CTE program at their high school, which trained all the kids on how to remediate lead, kids in the CTE program. So there was many different steps that they took to address lead from multiple different stakeholders. And so ultimately our goal, we have another meeting coming up with Beverly that we're trying to schedule pretty soon. She did share some recent data. The data from 2016 to 2020, there was 164 kids in the Seacoast that had lead poisoning, and 25 of those kids were in Portsmouth. So that's pretty concerning because lead poisoning is completely preventable. And one of the issues is that that number is probably underreported, because what Beverly and Gail from the state were sharing with us is that a lot of people, it is recommended that kids at 1 and 2 years old get their blood tested for lead, but they've seen like a significant drop in parents actually following through with that. I think at the first year, it's like 60%, and then the second year is 50% or something like that. So the fact that not everybody's participating in the testing means that number is probably higher. So again, just working with multiple stakeholders like healthcare providers to improve blood testing rates, water departments to offer water testing, inspection departments to look for lead paint, having a more comprehensive approach with stakeholders. So ultimately, our goal, Kim, Hope, and I, is to have kind of follow Claremont's model, work with the state, and bring a lot of different stakeholders from the city together to tackle this issue and see if there's different parts that everyone can play to help identify lead poisoning, raise awareness, and ultimately reduce it and prevent it. And so we can keep you updated, Kim, Hope, and I know Hope did say, even though she is stepping off this flag, where she's put a lot of time and effort into this initiative, she will continue to work on this lead initiative with Kim and I. So, so that's great, and we'll just continue to update it.
So, Rich, are you, want your hand up again? Or not?
Yep, it's me again. I just want to, I'm not looking for work, but I had about 25, 30 years experience with in the lead poisoning issues, particularly with the state Division of Public Health in my 11 years in Manchester, where we led the world in lead poisoning. So if anyone would like, I'd be happy to participate with Andrea and Kim and Hope to
Right.
contribute my 2 cents and my years of experience dealing with lead poisoning, and both
Well,
from the
that'd be awesome.
environmental part and from the medical part.
Good. Well, thank you.
Appreciate
I
that.
unfortunately had the experience of having to investigate the only death from lead poisoning in the country in over 20 years, and so I have a particularly emotional connection with lead poisoning and lead issues.
Hey,
Thank you, Rich. Definitely take you up on that. Thank you very much. And then just the last topic was the last topic at our last meeting. We didn't get to it because we ran over, and now we're starting to slightly run over, but we're really just trying, we should start with this, I think, next time, but really trying to get a sense from this flag about additional topics or areas of concern that people want to discuss moving forward. And so, some things that we've addressed in terms of goals or topics, we had a community drinking water forum in May of this year. We did receive a legislative update on certain water bills from our reps that sit on this flag, State Rep David Muse and Senator Perkins Coca. And then these other topics listed below that, are things that have come up in past discussions. Or questions that have been raised. And so we wanted to throw it out to the flag to see if there's any burning topics of concern that people really want us to be focusing on as we think through, we meet quarterly, so we'll have 4 more meetings next year. As Brian and I plan those out, it would be very helpful for all of you as to what topics or areas of interest we should be focused
and do I have a suggestion, since we are running near over time here? So maybe, and I could do this, put out a survey, like one of these survey monkeys to the group, and then everybody, including those that aren't here now, could jump in and, because the other thing too is sort of meeting times, meeting dates. I mean, today, we did our best to schedule a meeting. First thing we have to do is see about the city calendar, then the school calendar, and then you've got the holidays. And you've got the process of eliminates, but also there might be people wanting the times having some committees meet during the day, even, which would be fine for 3 of us, 4 of us here, but not maybe so much for others. So maybe if I do that, I'll work on the survey probably after the first year. We'll get it out there, and then we'll be able to sit down and review it and see if there's some good ideas. You again, Rich? Good.
Yeah, that's me again.
Yeah.
Regarding Legionnaires, I was wondering, do we have a handle at all in the city in terms of, number one, the number of buildings that have cooling towers like they have we had an outbreak in the Bronx year or two ago with Legionnaires.
Legionnaires,
Most
no.
of that comes from, and the
so
other
that-
part would be,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
gets into the plumbing department and that, so we did outreach. So we did send a mailer to every commercial property. This was during COVID. Because the concern was you got a lot of buildings that aren't having much water use and stale water can lead to Legionnaires. So we did that outreach then. It's my understanding, I mean, now we get in the realm of, we're definitely more than once removed from the management of a, building that has a cooling tower that, there are, parameters that the buildings are supposed to comply with, certain management of that, but that's a good point. We do have Legionnaires as one of our future meeting topics, so maybe
Yeah.
we'll bring that one forward, and
Yeah.
I think at that one, we could probably include our inspections department as part of that, and it sort of it does cross over into the health department as well, so you've got all kinds of sort of combination of people that would have information and also response to it.
yeah, we also have the issue, particularly with more hotels and so forth, with hot
Hot
tubs and
tubs,
spas,
Hot
that
tubs,
issue.
spas, pools, yep. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
If anyone doesn't have like a topic or anything you have that they want to put out right now, switch over to public comment if we have anyone.
we have no public. We have the original one person that,
Get to it.
I mean, we could go back, we'll have her email address because she registered as.
if you have a question. All right, well, great,
I think
thank you.
this concludes our meeting. Thank you, everybody.
All
Thanks
right,
for a great year.
yes,
See you guys all again in the new year. Look for a survey.
see you, Rich. Thanks.
Thank you.